We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph in Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 12a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara was dealing with the teaching of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that when it comes to the Tamidim, the public karbanos, let's say they're left over from the previous year, and the halach is they have to be brought on the year that the funds were given for that particular year. They can't be brought for the next year. So what do we do in such a situation? So Rabbi Yochanan said that those animals can actually be redeemed even though they have no blemish. And the Gemara had explained that the reason is because Leiv Bezdin Masna Aleim, that's like a stipulation of the court, that if these animals are not used in the proper year, so then they're able to be redeemed again, even without a blemish. And the Gemara in the previous Amud was in the middle of asking on this psak halacha from the Mishnah, because in the Mishnah is discussing the seirim, the goats that are brought as karban musafin at various times, whether it be Yom Kippur or the Regalim or Rosh Chodesh. And Rabbi Shimon said in the Mishnah that let's say the soyer is not brought on its particular time. Let's say it gets lost, then you find it later, so then you could bring it on a different time. Let's say it wasn't brought on Yom Kippur, you could bring it on the Regalim, etc. And the Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah said, even though the kapara that they affect is not exactly the same, a soyer for Yom Kippur gives a kapara on certain specific scenarios of Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav, and it's different for Rosh Chodesh, it's different when it comes to the Regalim, but still, since in general the kapara is for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav, so it can be brought at the various times. And so the Gemara asked, well, you see from Rabbi Shimon that Rabbi Shimon does not say Leiv Bezdin Masna Alein. And the Gemara said, well, that's actually true. Rabbi Shimon happens to hold that we don't say Leiv Bezdin Masna Alein, and so that's not a question, it's a different Tana. And really, it's the Rabbanan when we said that you're allowed to say Leiv Bezdin Masna Alein, that is following the Rabbanan. And the Gemara is in the middle of discussing, well, which Rabbanan exactly are we talking about? And the Gemara suggested on the previous Amud, maybe it's the Rabbanan by Ketores. That was a Mishnah we cited earlier in Meseches Shkolim. That Mishnah says that when you have leftover Ketores, very similar to leftover Tamidin, so again, you're able to redeem it. And so you see from over there that according to the Rabbanan, you're able to redeem that. But the Gemara says that's not a proof, because Shani Ketores, maybe it's different by the Ketores, the Lav Bar Re'iyohi, because that's not something, the Lo Bar Re'iyohi, it's not something that can be left to graze and develop a blemish. So maybe over there they say it. That doesn't mean they're going to say it when it comes to animals. And so the Gemara continues, El Rabbanan de Para, maybe it's the Rabbanan in the Brisa we cited earlier by Para Aduma. It said similarly by Para Aduma, that you're able to redeem the Para Aduma. Let's say you find a better Para Aduma. So over there also, again, we say Leiv Bezdin Masna Alein. But again, the Gemara says, Dil Mashani Para, maybe it's different by the Para Aduma, Didam Meha Yakarn, we mentioned this earlier, it's very expensive, and so therefore there is reason in that situation that we should be able to say that. Maybe we wouldn't say that by animals that are designated for the carbon tamid. And so the Gemara says Ve'ela Rabbanan de Amru Lo, but maybe it's the Rabbanan of the Amru Lo, meaning in the Mishnah itself, the Rabbanan are the ones that are responding. They're arguing against Rabbi Shimon. So maybe it's those Rabbanan. As Rashi explains, El Rabbanan de Amru Lo b'Masnisin. It's the Rabbanan in the Mishnah who argue with Rabbi Shimon. They're the ones that say you cannot use the Seirim for the different days. V'hachi Amrile, they're saying as follows, Hoel ve'ein kaparos on Shaveh. They're saying to Rabbi Shimon, since the kapara is not exactly the same on various days, v'les loch leiv bezin masna, and you don't hold of leiv bezin masna, shem avad bazeh yakriv lazel kapara acheres, that if it gets lost for this one, then you should bring it for another one for a different kapara. So hechen kraven, that's exactly what they're arguing with Rabbi Shimon. You're the one that doesn't hold leiv bezin masna lein, but maybe the Rabbanan are saying that they do. But the Gemara continues and says that's not necessarily what the Rabbanan are saying. Mimai de Rabbi Yehuda. How do we know that Rabbanan, that they're following the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda? V'hachi kamar lein, he's saying as follows. B'shalom l'didi, if it would be Rabbi Yehuda, so then Rabbi Yehuda would be responding, it's correct according to me. Da'amino leiv bezdin masna lein, because I say leiv bezdin masna lein. Amtu l'hachi yikravu, that's why they're able to be brought on the different days. Elo l'didach, but according to Rabbi Shimon, da'amrit lo, that you don't say that. Amai yikravu, so then why is it that they're able to be brought? Maybe that's what's going on, but how do you know that that's what's going on in that response of the Rabbanan? Dilma Rabbi Meir, maybe what's actually happening is it's the Rabbi Meir that's responding to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Meir, again, was the one that holds that all the Seirim do affect the exact same kapara. V'hachi kamar lein, maybe this is what he's saying to Rabbi Shimon, B'shalom l'didi, it's good according to me, da'amina kol ha-Seirim kaparas on Shaveh, because I say all of the Seirim on these various days, the Regalim and Yom Kippur and Rosh Chodesh, they have the same kapara. Misham hachi yikravu, that's why you can bring them on different days. Ela l'didach, but according to you, amai yikravu, why can they be brought? And so therefore, there's no proof to this sheet of the Chachamim from the Mishnah either. And so the Gemara says, so where are we getting this idea that the Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Shimon? Ela, rather, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Gemara Gomer Lo. Rabbi Yochanan, he had a tradition in this fashion. L'divrei Rabbi Shimon ein niftin, that according to Rabbi Shimon, they cannot be redeemed. Again, a situation here, they cannot be redeemed without a mum. L'divrei Chachamim niftin, and according to the Chachamim, they in fact can be redeemed. And Rashi explains, Mimaid Rabbi Yehuda ka'amar lei di'islei nami en kaparas on Shava. How do you know that it's Rabbi Yehuda responding to Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Yehuda is the one that agrees with Rabbi Shimon that they don't have the same kapara, these various seirim. Rabbi Shimon, he holds like Rabbi Shimon in that regard. Umisham leiv bezdin masna hu dekam mosevla, and therefore he'd be asking because he holds of leiv bezdin masna. V'achi kamar leiv b'shlaman, he would be responding as follows along those lines. Dilma Rabbi Meir kamar la, maybe that's Rabbi Meir responding to Rabbi Shimon. Di'islei kaparas on Shava, he holds that their kapara is exactly the same. V'achi kamar le, in which case his response would be along those lines. And the Gemara continues with Rabbi Shimon. Now, according to the sheet of Rabbi Shimon, the less leiv bezin masna lein that we're saying again, according to Rabbi Shimon, he doesn't hold leiv bezin masna lein. There is no stipulation that you can just redeem these animals, these tamidin that weren't brought, they weren't able to be brought in their proper year. So my avdin lahu. So what do we do with these animals according to Rabbi Shimon? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan says, mikitzin bohenes hamizbeach. You use that, what's called for the kayetz hamizbeach in the long summer days. So you need to always have something on the mizbeach. So you'll use them for those kinds of karbanos. Rashi explains, Mekitzin bohenas hamizbeach, kisha mizbeach bottle. When the mizbeach is bottle, it's not being used for anything. Makriven oso ola linidva tzibor. So you'll use these animals as an ola, is just a nedava of the tzibor, a nedava of the public. And Rashi continues and notes, Kiddushamin and Leila Rabbi Shimon. We see this along these same lines according to Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah. The Omer b'masnisim, because what does Rabbi Shimon say in the Mishnah? He says in the Mishnah, Gabe sor, by the goat, Shalo karav bazeh yikra bazeh. Let's say it wasn't brought on its proper day, it wasn't brought on Yom Kippur, it can then be brought on the regel. Mishum taima dekulan boin l'chaper al tumas mikdash v'gadashim. And the reason that Rabbi Shimon gives is because they're all generally the same kapara, even though they're not the exact same kapara. They're all a kapara for tumas mikdash v'gadashav. Alma afagav delav hainu dahi kapara gufa. So you see, even though it's not the exact kapara, kevan the shaycha b'miksasa karavla, since it's a little shaykh, it's a little relevant to that kind of kapara, that's enough to say that we bring it. Hachinami, so the same thing is going to be true over here. You have a tamid that wasn't able to be brought. Elu shalocho letzorech tamidin v'lo hutzruchu yikravu l'kayetz hamizbeach. They were brought for tamid, and instead they'll be brought for kayetz hamizbeach sharei l'shem ola hofreshu, because they were separated as an ola. V'kayetz nami olahu, and kayetz hamizbeach is also a karvan ola. So again, it's along the same lines. That's what Rabbi Shimon will say. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak says, Umod Rabbi Shimon would admit, B'seirei chatos, when it comes to the seirei chatos, those were designated to be karvan chatos, she'ein mekitzin beguf, and there you're not allowed to use those for kayetz hamizbeach. You can't use those actual animals, ela b'dmein, you'd have to use their value. You can buy other animals with their value. Hachahu d'mei kara ola v'hashta ola, because over here, when we're talking about the tzmidin, it was originally an ola, now it's an ola, like Rashi mentioned. Aval hasav d'mei kara chatos v'hashta ola here, but over there where it's originally a chatas and now you're trying to do an ola, that's already problematic because gezeira lachar kapara atu lifnei kapara. Because if you're going to do this after kapara, we have a gezeira that maybe lifnei kapara, people will think this is allowed, which it is not. And Rashi explains, Moda Rabbi Shimon b'seirei chatos. Rabbi Shimon would admit by seirei chatos, meaning sheniknu mitrumas halishka shel shanazu. Let's say they were bought from the trumas halishka, from those funds of this particular year. Vinitosru, and then they ended up being extra. You didn't use them for the proper year. Kagon soyer shel rosh chodesh adar she'avad. Let's say, for example, you had the soyer of rosh chodesh adar. It was lost. V'nimtza b'nisan, then it's found already the next year in Nisan. She'eno royli karev od lechov asibur. You're not going to bring it anymore for the obligation of the community. V'areu l'kayetz hamizbeach. So then it's going to be l'kayetz hamizbeach. So modehu she'ein mekitzin begufo likarev ola. So Rabbi Shimon would admit you wouldn't be able to use it as an ola. Ela b'damav, rather you got to use its value. Sheyira, let it graze, ulechashayumam, when it gets a mum, yechu b'damav ola l'kayetz hamizbeach. Then you'll use the value and you'll use that money for an ola for kayetz hamizbeach. Because again, hasamhu gabe tamidim by tamidim shelo hutzruchu, where again you didn't use them in the proper year. Kamar Rabbi Shimon de mekitzim begufan. There you can use the actual animal for the ola for kayetz hamizbeach to make karla shem ola nilkachu v'hashtanami ola karvi, because it was originally bought for an ola. Now you're bringing it as an ola. But Rashi continues, Aval Hacha, but over here, Gezeira liachar kapara atu kodem kapara. We have a Gezeira after kapara because of before kapara, meaning, Imachsheres chatos tzibor likarev ola liachar shenischapru tzibor biachar. Like in this case, let's say we allow this chatos tzibor to be brought as an ola because the tzibor already, they used a different one. Again, this animal got lost. They ended up bringing a different one for their chatos. So if you're going to say that that's allowed, V'nitan zel l'kayetz hamizbeach, you'll use this for kayetz hamizbeach, Asi la'achshure nami la'ola kodem kapara. People will think you can do this even before they got a kapara shestam l'shem chatos omid, when really it's just set up that it should be for a chatos and not for an ola. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, Afa non nami tanina, we learned like this in a brisa as well. Par v'soyer shal Yom HaKippurim sha'avdu, again you have the power or the goat of Yom Kippur that were lost. V'hifar shachem tachteim, you ended up separating others instead. V'chein se'ira avodah zara sha'avdu, similarly the goats of avodah zara that were lost, brought for the aver of avodah zara. V'hifar shachem tachteim, and again you separated others instead. Kulon yamusa, so then if you find the animals, you have to let them die. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Lazar of Rabbi Shimon Omrim, Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon, they say, Yiru ad sheyistavi, you let them graze until they develop a blemish, v'yimachru, and then they're sold, v'yiplu demei and l'nedava, and then their money, that money, those funds will be used for nedava, she'in chatas tzibor mesa, we don't allow the chatas of the public to die, and so v'amai, now why is it that we're doing this? Nikravu inu gufayu ola, just bring the animals themselves as an ola. Why are we bringing an ola with the money that you're getting from those animals? Elalav shvamina, rather don't we see what we just said above, gezer la'achar kapara, atu lifnei kapara, that we make a gezerah after kapara because of lifnei kapara. Again, it's a chatas, you can't use it for an ola. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. Amar Rava says, Afa non nami tanina, we also learned the same thing in a Mishnah in Yuma. V'hasheni, the second one, this is referring to a situation where you have the two goats, one la Hashem and one la Azazel. If one of them dies, so then you have to separate another two. And then what do you do with the one that remained alive from the first pair? Yira achi yistoyev, you let it graze until it develops a blemish, v'yimachar, and it's sold. V'yiplu dam of linadav, and again the money is used for nadava, for these carbon olos. V'yamai, again, why is that true? Yikrav ihu gufe ola, just bring the animal itself as an ola. Again, the same thing. Rather, don't we see again a gezerah after kapara because of before kapara? Again, you can't bring an animal that was designated as a chatos for an ola. And the Gemara continues. Amar Ravina says, Afa non nami tanina. We also learn the same thing in a Mishnah in Meseches. Tamura asham shemesu ba'olav. Let's say you have an asham that its owner died. Oshen ischapru ba'olav. Or let's say the owner got a kapara from another animal. Let's say this was lost and they had a replacement and then they find it. So yira ad sheyistoyev, it has to be left to graze until it develops a blemish. V'yimacher v'yiplu dam of linadav, and again it's sold and the money is used for a carbon nedava. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yamas, Rabbi Eliezer says we just let it die. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Yavi bedam of ola. Rabbi Yoshua says you bring with its money an ola. The Gemara over there in Tzmura asks that Rabbi Yoshua seems to be saying the same thing as the first opinion. Nedava is also an ola that the Gemara deals with over there. But in any case, again the Gemara says v'likarev hagufa ola. Why not bring the animal itself as an ola? Why are we using the money for an ola? Elalav gezer lachar kapara atu lifnei kapara. Rather, again, we see that there's a gezer lachar kapara atu lifnei kapara, and again, you can't bring something that was designated as an asham. Now you can't bring that as an ola. And the Gemara says shma mina. The Gemara says indeed, we see that that is the case. And the Gemara continues, Tanya nami hachi. We have a brisa like this as well. Mahein mevian min hamosars. What do they bring from that which is extra? Rashi explains Tanya nami hachi means kido amar le'el mosaros l'Rabbi Shimon mekitzin bohenes hamizbech. This is a Tanya nami hachi to what we said before according to Rabbi Shimon, that again the extra ones by the Tamidim are brought as kayetz hamizbeach, mahin mevian min hamosaros shal tzibor shenitos from Mishana Lashon. Again, you have these extra community Tamidim that are left over from one year to the next. What do you do with them? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amid Beis.